Wake up with me as I talk about the lessons I learned from day one of the WIMBIZ annual conference. 4 things you probably want to do when next you're pitching. Wake up with me as I talk about the lessons I learned from day one of the WIMBIZ 23rd annual conference. I'm going to go in with this topical. I feel like this is a game changer for people who have oily faces like I do. The topicals, I'm going to still use my black up primer. So I'm going to apply this with my fingers. So the first thing I learned at this WIMBIZ conference this year was just a scenario that played out. I think I put it out on my stories. How a lady, it's pitch time, you have 5 minutes to pitch, and this lady comes up and ignores the 5 minutes. In short, the timer had to pause for her, and she went around sharing bottles of juices of her brand to the judges, to the immediate vice president, and the hall broke into two. Everybody was screaming, shouting, like she did something different that every other person in the room did not do. And I think what I learned from that scenario was that at the end of the day, all human beings, so people just want something different. It could be anything, and that's the funny part. It's not that you know what it is that people are looking out for, but just come differently. Look at what other people are doing and just bring your own twist to the scenario. That's one. I'm going to go with my black up foundation. I've had this foundation for almost over a year. So number 2 lessons I learned, again, we are all human beings. I think that's something I don't understand, or I underestimate personally whenever I'm pitching. I just think that I should talk about the facts and all of that. But I learned yesterday in a very realistic way that, see, we are all human beings. People want to connect. People want to hear stories that they can relate with. So another lady, again, is also pitching. And she's pitching and starts talking about how a lot of women, it's hard for a lot of women to go back to work after childbirth. So she gave the statistics. I don't know if it's true or not, but the statistics says that 51% of women struggle to go back to work after childbirth. And everybody in the room, it's a women conference, everybody in the room starts screaming, yes, yes. And you know, it's a women conference. See, let me give you a breakdown. This conference is for professionals, entrepreneurs, business owners, people working in multinational companies, and like people working across the continent. So they were all screaming, like it was so relatable. There was this vibe in the room, like I get it kind of vibe from all the women. And guess what, that woman, she came second. The person who came first is my girl, and she was just real pitch. And I think something that stood out on her own end was she gave her numbers. Her traction. She's been exporting things across 10 countries, and everybody was like, wow, everybody clapped. Like it stood out, right? So I think this will really help a lot of people who are pitching. If you want to pitch, you may want to take up this point. I can rephrase it again. 4 things you probably want to do when next you're pitching is: number 1, be relatable, tell stories that people can relate to. Number 2, do something different. Anything. See, if I want to add to that, I'll tell you, go crazy, because people just want something different. People just want something else. They don't want the normal. At the end of the day, we are all humans, and people are just looking for something extra. Number 3, have your numbers on your hand. Show how much you have made, show the traction of customers and all of that. The judges were so keen on that, and I think it's the reason why the 3 people who won. There were other people with other ideas. Then one of the women did something that really stuck. She does a travel agency, and all of us knew she was not pitching to us to get the grant. I think she was pitching to market her business, because she said her business has been running for 20 years, and we are like, what do you need 3 million, 5 million, 4 million naira to do, right? And that was it for the pitch. So other things I learned at the WIMBIZ conference. DDK said something. That lady, anytime she's speaking, I feel like she should just go on and on. She's just so on point and makes very solid points. And so she said something that really stuck. She said, sometimes women hold on to old past relationships, like because you went to school with somebody, or you attended a certain primary school with somebody, you just think that because you guys have met sometime again in life, you guys will now become parties and all of that. That is not always the case, and I agree with her. The thing I learned was one of the plenary session. The woman said something that stuck, and she said in different industry or different environments, there are things that become priority. So what is priority in the public sector is different from what's priority in the private sector, and how she was able to move from the private sector to public sector and what work is for her. Then in same plenary session, one of the guys said something, and I feel like it stuck to me. He said, avoid people who are too ambitious, like people who prioritize ambition, power over service in the workplace. And that is super true. You know, something that is very popular in this our time, millennial Gen Z, is that people are moving from one work to another. There's no loyalty because of money they want to make. You see people saying closing your laptop after so time and all of that. Don't do extra, don't do. See, I understand those things fly sometimes, but in the workplace, please always try to put value. Do your work like your life depends on it. Do your work like your life depends. All this whole vibe of I'm not going to do too much, I want to climb up and all of that is always risky, because those people, in short, in his words, but it was more like, be careful of people who are just so keen about power and moving to the next level because of power, not because of service. Those people will pull you down. So it was an advice to business owners and leaders and managers in the business circle, and that made so much sense. I really understood that so much, because it's the reality. You see a lot of people who are just all about the money and all of that, and it's not like you shouldn't be all about the money, but service should be prioritized. I think that's the learning point. Service should just be prioritized. We should do better, right? He said that. And another thing that stood out again for me, the vice president was making his speech, he said something that stood out. He said the WIMBIZ founders and communities, that he's proud that they have been able to build an elite community. So if they need to get things done, it's just not far off. Like, they are one call or sometimes 2 calls away from people in power. People like, this is an elite community. We try to remind them and everyone. But more than this being an elite community, they should understand that the power they wield is power that can make changes in policies, power that can make changes or put pressure on the leaders and the politicians to do better. And I caught on that, because wanting to have privilege, power or anything is another thing to know how to wield it or to use that to make impact. So I think most of that conversation was more about for them to remember that despite wielding the power they wield, because that's actually an elite community now, most of them are in power, most of them are policymakers, a lot of women there are big women, he was trying to say. And so they should understand that their power is not just for themselves, it's to change things, move policies, put pressures on politicians to be able to do the right thing, the same way they put pressure on him. And he said, like, he was just referring to how his wife spoke to him to show up, and he had to show up, right? And that was something that resonated with me too in the event. Something that I really want to also put out is that I'm proud of the work the WIMBIZ community has done, right? It's 23, like, you have done something not once, not twice, 23 times. I feel like it's something that they should be applauded for. Being able to build community for women to grow and thrive in, and all of that is what the noise. And so those are the things I learned at the day one. I was able to connect with a lot of people. I saw pretty women. No, I'll talk about that in another video. So let me finish dressing up so I don't get distracted.